Hello, everyone. Greetings from Finland. I'm talking briefly about a paper that accepted for publication in Journal of Supply Chain Management, Building Successful NGO Business Relationship, a Social Capital Perspective. First of all, we would like to describe a bit about the motivation of working on this paper. This paper is related to what I did in the last years, working on inter-organizational relationship in a humanitarian context. In the past, we worked on the challenges and practices of collaboration among international NGOs. In addition, between a relationship between international NGOs and local NGOs, some kind of localization of aid. But then in this study, we decided to work on the relationship between businesses, firms, and NGOs. The reason behind that is that we realized from reading articles and also from interviewing practitioners and managers that both of businesses and firms and also NGOs are interested to work with each other. NGOs require resources before disasters, before some natural disasters happens, or maybe some not kind of natural disasters, let's say, and before the, let's say, for capacity building initiatives, and also after disaster for response. And in addition, the businesses are more and more interested to work with the NGOs, not just for philanthropic purposes. They are more and more interested to implement their CSR commitments, sustainability plans, and then they realize that, okay, let's work together and let's share our resources. But the thing is that if you study the articles, if you talk to the practitioners and managers, you realize that there are lots of challenges, and there are not so many successful partnerships between NGOs and firms. So then we thought that, okay, let's start and work on this phenomenon. And we visited some conferences that are not academic, but they are actually for practitioners that they try to network with each other. For example, the suppliers and humanitarian organizations, NGOs, UN agencies, local NGOs. So we participated in their meetings, panelists shared their ideas, opinions, experiences, and we had a chance to interview with some of them. And if I want to explain, I give you two examples, two conferences that are very useful for us. Was AIDEX conference, Aid Exhibition Conference, that is annually held in Brussels, and the other one is the Humanitarian Networks and Partnership Weeks that is held in Geneva. So these, participation on these in these conferences and learning about what is going on in practice helps us to and motivate us to work on this topic. And in the same time, from the academic perspective, we learned about what is going on in the business and NGO literature. And from supply chain management perspective, specifically, I want to name the Journal of Supply Chain Management Emerging Discourse Incubator that is very related to the NGOs. That was very, very inspiring for us. So it gives us more energy to work on a topic that is useful in practice, and also there is call for it from the academic perspective. So we started working on it, and we contacted with multiple NGOs and firms for conducting interviews and getting access to their information, and that went well. Yeah, we had 9 case studies, and at the end we analyzed the data.
The paper, first of all, confirmed that tensions, as mentioned in the literature on cross-sectoral relationships, are present in NGO business relationships and also in successful NGO business relationships. So there are differences in mandates and goals, for instance. NGOs want to provide or offer life-saving assistance and reduce suffering, while businesses want to create profits. Another tension, for instance, is the tension on reputation, while NGOs want to make sure that they are independent. Companies, businesses often like the idea of working together and create visibility on that. There's a third tension, which is about working rhythm and culture. There's a completely different culture, for instance, in languages that companies and NGOs speak. Companies always think in terms of KPIs, while NGOs rather talk in a don't use numbers to look at results. There are also differences in resources. Big companies have much more resources than NGOs, for instance. And all these differences, all these tensions between NGOs and businesses create the fact are confirmed, first of all, in this study, but make it also more difficult to create a successful relationship. And what we show is that social capital can really help to overcome all these tensions, which are so typical for these NGO business relationships. And as such, our research provides a generic model, which is showing how these tensions can actually be reduced by certain forms of social capital. So relational capital, structural capital, or cognitive capital, and how this can lead them to a successful relationship. So we developed a process framework which helped us to create successful relationships, and it tells us which types of social capital can help to reduce certain tensions in that NGO business relationship. For instance, cognitive together with relational capital, it enables the relationship to overcome tensions in terms of misaligned goals and reputational differences, and enables the relationship to be long-term focused and to create, as such, a successful relationship. Other social capital items, such as structural together with relational capital, can help the relationship to overcome then the differences in culture and in resources, while enabling the relationship to create capabilities, supply chain capabilities, which leads again to successful relationships. So these process frameworks enable us to understand how to overcome these tensions and how to create success in the relationship. So our research is focusing on dyadic relationships. The main reason for that is that previous research showed that 96% of all NGO business relationships are actually dyadic in nature. However, future research could also look at a network perspective in which a network of NGOs and businesses work together. However, at this moment, they are still very rare in humanitarian organizations. So perhaps in other cross-sectoral relationships, not in the humanitarian area, we might have nice examples of these and analyze these type of relationships. relationships would be an interesting avenue for the future. We only focused in our research on successful relationships. However, in doing so, we noticed that there were huge differences in what companies thought was a successful relationship. And given these differences, there might be more things to research about this. We might also look at the cost and the benefits of certain types of relationships, because they are not all the same and some had other features as such. It might be interesting to look at in the future at the costs and the benefits of these relationships, because we do not assume that every relationship should have similar characteristics to be successful. A third avenue for the future is actually that we found some interactions between social capital dimensions. However, as we are doing case study research, we cannot say a lot about the nature of the interaction. Is it moderating? Is it mediating? So we cannot tie conclusions to that, but future research might do so. Yeah. Finally, we also look at only European NGO business relationships. The reason for that is because we are ourselves in Europe, and we thought it was nicer to build trust, or it was easier to build trust with European NGOs and businesses to talk about these issues. But future research might go beyond that, because I think cultural differences might also have an influence on how these companies and NGOs perceive these relationships.
In the future, we have plans, actually not in the future, but we have ongoing research projects to understand of the dynamic of collaboration and partnerships in these settings between businesses and NGOs, but from the supply chain management perspective. And because we know that this topic is interdisciplinary, and people from supply chain management, from business ethics, from cross-sectional partnerships, they are looking at it from different perspectives. And so we would like to look at the dynamic of the collaboration, the types of collaboration and partnerships, how they can actually develop it to the higher level or lower level, depending on the situation that NGOs and businesses face. Yeah, so that's the thing that I also wanted to mention, and the other thing that might be useful for in the future is that the findings of this study could be also useful for other cross-sectional sectors. For example, if public sector wants to collaborate or make relationship with organizations, with private sector in health sector, for example, health services, or in education sector. So how they can actually put their resources and work together for the joint goals and objectives.
So our research provides a process framework for supply chain managers and for managers who are building these NGO business relationships, to make sure that they understand how to make the relationship successful and how to overcome the tensions which exist in NGO business relationships. So that's the first add-on for managers, or how it can help managers in their work. Second, we also found some differences between NGO business relationships and commercial relationships. While in commercial relationships, there's a lot of effort to be made to build trust. We have the impression that trust, based on our cases, is built more easily in NGO business relationships. However, they need to put more effort in communicating and in sharing knowledge with one another. But the trust in the end is built more develops more naturally in these relationships. Another example of differences between those commercial relationships and NGO business relationships is the structural element. Structural capital in NGO business relationships is a little bit different in the sense that it's also about influencing NGOs and other business companies in the industry. So compared to commercial relationships, they are creating contacts not mainly in the vertical supply chain, but more horizontally. And it also is more about a bridging role. So social capital has more a bridging role instead of a bonding role as in normal commercial relationships. And that, I think, are very important points to take into consideration when building NGO business relationships.
I would like to thank the Journal of Supply Chain Management editorial board for all the support, for sharing, inviting experts to review our papers. In addition, in the next steps to help us to improve the paper. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the initiatives that they have in terms of developing the emerging discourse incubator I think is one of the best initiatives that have been helpful for us, to helpful and also inspiring to work on this topic. And I'm sure that it would be useful, especially when you also provide the journal provide the invited scholars, they have invited papers for that, let's say.